Thank you, Ingrid. And yes, as mentioned by Ingrid, of course, these are really short takeaways for this BarCamp series. More details you can find in other BarCamps where the summaries also have been made and where you, of course, can visit the videos and the presentations in more detail to find out more. I think it's really important. One of the key takeaways is that GESI, gender equality and social inclusion categories are not homogeneous. We cannot treat women as one category, people with disability. We cannot assume that an approach is working only for one group, for all these groups. So I think a universal approach has to be used, which addresses the multiple forms and intersection of gender equality and social inclusion, and so that a commitment of leave no one behind can be fulfilled. We need also a learner-centric training and service provision. Then one very important aspect which came repeatedly in the BarCamps was that there is a need for political and stakeholder leadership and commitment, which really drives the gender equality and social inclusion. It also needs clear allocated funds and human resources for implementation and monitoring. There needs to be allocated provisions. Then, of course, we have a twin track perspective. On one side, we have to overcome policy barriers, regulatory barriers, and an enabling environment for gender and equality and social inclusion for mainstreaming, so that the agenda can be really realized, but also there is a need for targeted and need-based interventions, taking into account the specific needs of particular groups facing barriers in dVET and labor markets. Then, of course, important is also the cultural setup. It's important to overcome stereotypes, biases, in administration, in the institutions and in programming. That means sensitization is absolutely critical. And of course, collaboration with many partners to be able that these administrative bodies and institutions are really building the capacities to address the diversity of gender equality and social inclusion. Then business sector is an active driver for diversity and inclusion in dual VET. We have seen very interesting innovative approaches, how companies, multinational firms, as well as smaller partners, business partners for training, have actually approached diversity and gender inclusion. A business case is very important to be made, so one has to work on convincing cases to become attractive as people to be absorbed in the labor market. Then partnerships and involvement of specialized community-based organizations can ensure that barriers are well identified and addressed. As that's a very important aspect, because you need to know the training needs, you need to know also the barriers within the communities and build the trust within the communities to help and support access of disadvantaged groups into training and labor markets. Then raising awareness, I already mentioned, at all levels is really important, because many cultural bias and stereotypes are remaining. People assume certain aspects related to women, that they are less capable in technical STEM related positions and jobs. And the same for people with disabilities, which often face the barriers at the beginning already when being interviewed, instead of actually giving them the opportunity of being capable human beings. Then, of course, promote role models is a critical aspect for people even to aspire, because barriers also, of course, influence aspirations of disadvantaged groups. More research has been discussed also in this BarCamp is required, and better data collection, of course, participatory qualitative and quantitative research methods are critical, particularly when we are wanting to talk about transformative approaches going beyond disaggregated data, where one only looks at how many women and how many men have enrolled and graduated training and successfully been placed in the labor market. So it's important to also look, when we look at transformative approaches, how their roles in the labor market as well as in the households and has changed over time. This, of course, needs data at the household level, for instance, how decision-making is made, but also how women or disadvantaged groups can change their behaviors towards more agency and self-determination. Finally, I think that's something which we can do right away to look at better understanding existing data. It's important to get deeper into an understanding of data when we look at intersectionalities, multiple forms of discriminations. It's important to look at also to what extent over time changes in labor markets take place, whether, for instance, women have a stronger representation in middle-level managerial positions. All that can be assessed and identified over time. Then, of course, disaggregated data beyond gender, that's an important aspect. Statistics statistical analysis allows to actually further disaggregate. For instance, when we have women and men as categories, we also have rural and urban data often when we undertake surveys or have enrollment or graduation data. We also have information whether people have disabilities or not, or are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So one can actually then also look which group particularly responds to vocational training interventions and which doesn't, so that one actually can address the existing barriers. Then, of course, most importantly, and I think in many places this is done very, very incidentally, or it's linked to projects, but not really a practice in governments to really conduct tracer studies which look at training and transition to work, which should become a part of institutional practice when analyzing the impact on employment and overall benefits of disadvantaged groups, what training has and active labor market measures. I think that's it for now, and I hope this summarizes well enough all the 5 BarCamps. Please go again back into the specific BarCamps if you're interested to find out more, and thank you very much.